The stars looked different from the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Liberation. Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands behind his back, watching the endless black of space through the main view screen. His gray uniform carried the scars of many battles, and his eyes held the weight of command. At 45 years old, he had seen more war than most men twice his age. The bridge hummed with quiet activity. Officers moved between their stations with practiced ease. The Liberation was one of humanity's finest ships, built with technology that their ancestors could never have imagined. But Jake knew the truth that every human carried in their hearts. None of this would exist without the Kithra, Lieutenant. Commander Lisa Hayes looked up from her station near the back of the bridge. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her face showed the focus of someone who spent her days studying the past. As the ship's xenorchaeologist, she knew more about alien cultures than most people knew about their own families. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice cutting through the bridge noise. "We're getting something strange on the long-range sensors." Jake turned from the view screen and walked over to her station. The other officers continued their work, but he could feel their attention shift to the conversation. In space, strange usually meant dangerous. What kind of strange? Jake asked, looking at the data scrolling across Lisa's screens. "It's old," Lisa said, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Really old. The signal pattern matches something from our historical archives." She paused, and Jake saw her eyes widen. "Captain, this is a Kithra distress beacon." The bridge went completely silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and looked toward Lisa's station. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Kithra had been gone for 300 years. Most people thought they were just stories now. "Are you certain?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa nodded slowly. "The crystalline harmonic signature is unmistakable. This is definitely Kithra technology." She looked up at Jake with excitement and disbelief. "Captain, they're still out there." Jake closed his eyes for a moment and thought about the memorial hall 3 decks below. Every human ship had one. They were quiet places filled with crystal formations and soft blue light. Places where humans remembered the aliens who had died to save them. Places where they promised never to forget. "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered and changed. Instead of stars, they now saw a 3-dimensional map of local space. A small red dot pulsed at the edge of the display, far beyond the normal shipping lanes. The signal was weak and broken, but it was definitely there. "How far?" Jake asked. 8 months' travel at maximum speed," came the reply from Navigator Ben Carter, a young man who looked like he had never seen a battle. "It's way out on the galactic rim." Past the edge of map space, Jake stared at the red dot. 8 months was a long time. It would mean leaving human space completely. It would mean going into the unknown with no backup and no support. It would mean risking one of humanity's best ships and her entire crew. "Lisa," Jake said without taking his eyes off the screen, "tell me about the Kithra." Lisa stood up from her station and moved to the center of the bridge. This was her specialty, and Jake could see the passion in her eyes as she began to speak. "The Kithra were crystalline beings from the Andromeda border region," she began. "They first made contact with humanity in 2087 during the early days of our expansion into space. They were peaceful, scientific, and incredibly advanced. Their technology was based on living crystal that could grow and change according to their needs." Jake nodded. He had heard this story before, but it never got old. Every human child learned it in school. "When the Devourer fleet arrived in 2089, humanity was completely outmatched," Lisa continued. "Our ships were too slow, our weapons too weak, our shields too thin. The Devourers had already consumed 17 other civilizations. Earth was next." The bridge remained silent. Even the youngest crew members knew how close humanity had come to extinction. "The Kithra could have run," Lisa said, her voice growing stronger. "They could have fled to another galaxy and saved themselves. Instead, they chose to fight beside us. They gave us their shield technology. They shared their weapons. They taught us how to modify our ships. Jake remembered the old recordings he had seen as a child. Massive Kythera crystal ships fighting alongside small human vessels. Beams of pure energy cutting through Devourer hulls. The final battle at the edge of the solar system, where the alien fleet was finally broken. The war lasted 3 years, Lisa continued. By the end, almost every Kythera ship was destroyed. Their homeworld was gone. Their colonies were burning. But humanity survived. And then they vanished, Jake added quietly. The last Kythera ships left human space in 2092, Lisa confirmed. They said they were going to find a new home. They'd promised to stay in touch. But after a few years, the messages stopped coming. We sent search missions, but we never found them. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, brave people, people who understood what duty meant, people who knew the difference between right and wrong. The signal is getting weaker, Ben reported from his station. If we're going to respond, we need to decide soon. Jake knew what he had to do. It was not even a choice, really. Humanity had grown strong over the past 3 centuries. They had built a vast civilization among the stars. They had advanced technology and powerful fleets. But they had never forgotten the debt they owed. Lisa, Jake said, how long would it take to assemble a rescue fleet? Sir? Lisa looked surprised by the question. You heard me, Jake said, turning to face the entire bridge crew. The Kythera saved humanity when we were on the edge of extinction. They gave everything they had to keep us alive. Now they need help. The bridge erupted in excited conversation. Officers talked over each other, discussing supply requirements and ship assignments. Jake let them talk for a moment, then raised his hand for silence. I know what you are thinking, he said. 8 months is a long journey. The Galactic Rim is dangerous. We don't know what we will find out there. We don't even know if any Kythera are still alive. He paused and looked each of his officers in the eye. But here is what I know for certain, Jake continued. Humanity never forgets its debts. We never abandon our brothers. 300 years ago, the Kythera stood with us against impossible odds. Today we stand with them. The crew began to cheer, but Jake held up his hand again. This will not be easy, he warned. We will be going into uncharted space with no backup. We will face dangers we cannot imagine. Some of us may not come back. The cheering stopped, but Jake could see the determination in their faces. But if there are Kythera out there who need help, then by God, we are going to help them, Jake declared. Because that is what humans do. That is who we are. The bridge exploded in cheers again, and this time Jake let them continue. He turned back to the view screen and stared at the little red dot pulsing at the edge of space. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered when the noise died down. Tell them we need a full rescue fleet. Tell them the Kythera are calling. Lisa moved back to her station with tears in her eyes. Jake knew she was thinking about the memorial hall, about all the crystal formations that honored the dead. Soon, maybe they would honor the living instead. The liberation began to turn toward home, toward Earth, toward the beginning of humanity's greatest rescue mission. Behind them, the red dot continued to pulse in the darkness, a cry for help from old friends who had never been forgotten. The shipyard at Luna Station had never seen anything like it. 12 of humanity's most advanced warships floated in perfect formation around the massive dock, their hulls gleaming under the artificial lights. Workers in environmental suits crawled over every surface, loading supplies and making final adjustments. The air hummed with activity and purpose. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the observation deck of the station, watching the preparations below. At 52, she was one of the youngest admirals in human history, but her record spoke for itself. She had commanded fleets in the Outer Rim Wars and negotiated peace treaties with 6 different alien species. Now she faced her greatest challenge. Yet, the supply manifests are complete, reported Commander Ryan Clark as he approached the observation window. His young face showed the strain of working 18-hour days for the past month. Every ship is loaded with medical supplies, construction, equipment, and emergency rations for extended deployment. Kate nodded without taking her eyes off the fleet. The Liberation sat at the center of the formation, her battle scars hidden under fresh armor plating. Around her, 11 other vessels waited like sleeping giants. The Defiance, the Resolute, the Harmony, each one representing humanity's finest engineering and strongest will. What about the volunteer situation? Kate asked. Ryan smiled for the first time in weeks. We had to turn people away. Every colony in human space sent applications. Scientists, doctors, engineers, even historians who want to document the mission. The selection committee had to choose from over 50,000 volunteers. Kate felt a surge of pride. This was what made humanity special. When their friends needed help, ordinary people became heroes. Farmers left their fields, teachers abandoned their classrooms, and artists put down their brushes to join the greatest rescue mission in galactic history. Dr. Alex Turner rushed into the observation area, his lab coat still covered in chemical stains. His hair was wild from running his hands through it, and his eyes showed the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. But there was excitement in his voice when he spoke. "Admiral, we have made a breakthrough," he announced, holding up a data tablet. "I have been studying the old Kithra medical records, and I think I understand what is happening to them." Kate turned from the window. "Tell me." Alex activated his tablet and projected a holographic image into the air. The display showed a complex crystal structure that pulsed with inner light. Kithra physiology is based on living crystal matrices. Their bodies are not biological like ours, but they are alive in their own way. The crystals grow and change throughout their lives. Kate studied the image. "And the problem is?" "Crystalline degradation," Alex said grimly, "without proper maintenance. And the right environmental conditions, their crystal structures begin to break down. It is like a cancer, but worse. Once it starts, it spreads through their entire being." "How long do they have?" Kate asked. Alex shrugged helplessly. "I do not know. The distress signal is 300 years old already. They could be dying right now, or they could have found a way to slow the process. We will not know until we get there." Kate looked back at the fleet. 8 months suddenly seemed like an eternity. "Keep working on it," she ordered. "I want treatment protocols ready before we reach the galactic rim." Alex nodded and hurried away, already absorbed in his research again. Kate admired his dedication. Like everyone else on this mission, he understood what was at stake. Commander Ryan's communicator chirped, and he listened to the incoming message with a growing frown. "Admiral, we have a problem. The Hegemony Coalition is requesting a meeting." Kate cursed under her breath. The Hegemony was a loose alliance of alien species that controlled much of the galactic trade routes. They were not enemies exactly, but they were not friends either. They viewed humanity's rapid expansion with suspicion and jealousy. "What do they want?" Kate asked. "They claim our rescue mission is actually a military expansion disguised as humanitarian aid," Ryan replied. "They want us to submit to inspection and accept Hegemony observers on our ships." Kate felt anger rising in her chest. "They think we are lying about the Kithra?" "Apparently," Ryan said. "They say no species would risk so much for aliens that disappeared centuries ago." Kate stared at the fleet below. Every ship represented years of construction, billions of credits and resources, and thousands of human lives willing to risk everything. The idea that someone would question their motives was almost insulting. "Set up the meeting," Kate ordered. "Let them see for themselves what human honor looks like." The Hegemony delegation arrived 2 days later aboard a sleek diplomatic vessel. Their leader was Ambassador Vexstar, a tall reptilian creature from the Vorthek Empire. His scales were dark green, and his eyes held the cold intelligence of a predator. Behind him came representatives from 4 other species, each one looking skeptical and suspicious. Kate met them in the station's main conference room. The walls were decorated with images from human history, including several pictures of the ancient war against the Devourers. She had chosen the location carefully. "Admiral Phillips," Ambassador Vexstar said in his harsh voice, "the Hegemony Coalition appreciates your time. We have concerns about your planned military operation." "It is not a military operation," Kate replied calmly. It is a rescue mission. A rescue mission that requires 12 warships? Vextar's tongue flicked out to taste the air. A rescue mission to the edge of known space? You will forgive our skepticism. Kate stood up and walked to one of the wall. Images. It showed human and Kithra ships fighting side by side against the dark hulls of Devourer vessels. Tell me, Ambassador, how long has your species existed? Vextar seemed confused by the question. The Vorthic Empire has existed for over 2,000 years. And in all that time, has any other species ever sacrificed itself to save yours? The ambassador's eyes narrowed. That is not relevant to our discussion. Kate turned back to face the delegation. It is the only thing that matters. 300 years ago, the Kithra had a choice. They could run and save themselves, or they could fight and die for strangers. They chose to fight. They chose to give everything they had so that humanity could live. She walked around the table, looking each delegate in the eye. You want to know why we are risking 12 ships and thousands of lives? Because that is what friends do. Because that is what honor means. Because humanity never forgets its debts. Pretty words, Vextar said coldly. But words do not change the fact that you are moving a battle fleet toward contested space. Kate felt her patience snap. Then come with us. See for yourself what we find. Put observers on every ship if you want. But do not stand in our way. The delegation whispered among themselves in their various languages. Kate waited, her hands clenched into fists behind her back. Finally, Vextar spoke again. The Hegemony Coalition cannot officially support this mission, he announced. However, we will not interfere if you agree to our observer protocols. Kate nodded. It was not ideal, but it was better than fighting their way through hegemony space. Agreed. As the delegation filed out, Kate felt a hand on her shoulder. Commander Ryan had stayed behind. Think they believe us now? He asked. Kate looked back. At the image of humans and Kithra fighting together. I do not care if they believe us. The Kithra believed in us when it mattered. The next morning, the fleet began its journey. Kate stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, and watched as 12 ships moved in perfect formation toward the edge of human space. Behind them, Earth grew smaller until it was just another star in the darkness. Chief Engineer Maya Rodriguez reported from the engine room that all systems were running perfectly. Navigator Ben Carter had plotted their course through the safest possible routes. Medical Officer Dr. Noah Campbell confirmed that the hospital bays were ready for anything they might find. Kate allowed herself a moment of pride. This was humanity. At its best, not conquering or destroying, but reaching across impossible distances to help old friends. The Kithra had taught them that the strongest bonds were forged in battle and tempered by sacrifice. Now, it was time to return the favor. The stars ahead looked different than the ones behind. They were older, stranger, filled with mysteries that no human had ever explored. But Kate felt no fear as the fleet jumped into hyperspace and began the long journey to the galactic rim. Somewhere out there, the Kithra were waiting. And humanity was coming. The planet hung in space like a dying jewel. Kepler 442c orbited a red dwarf star that barely gave enough light to see by, and from orbit the world looked wrong. What should have been green forests and blue oceans were instead covered by massive crystal formations that stretched across entire continents. The crystals had once been beautiful, but now they flickered weakly like candles in the wind. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the world below, through the main viewer. After 8 months of travel, they had finally reached the source of the ancient distress signal. The journey had been hard, filled with battles against hostile aliens and dangerous storms in deep space, but they had made it. Preliminary scans are complete, reported Lieutenant Jessica Ward from the science station. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. The crystal formations are definitely Kithra architecture, but they are in severe decay. Some sections appear to have collapsed entirely. Kate felt her heart sink. They had come so far, risked so much, and they might still be too late. Any signs of life? She asked. Jessica worked at her controls for several long minutes before answering. There are faint energy readings from underground. Very faint, but consistent with Kethra life signs. Kate felt hope return. Prepare landing parties. Full environmental. Suits and medical support. I want teams on the surface within the hour. Colonel Danny Martinez was already suiting up in the shuttle bay when Kate arrived. At 38, he was one of humanity's most experienced ground commanders, a man who had led troops through a dozen different alien worlds. His face was grim as he checked his equipment. "What are we looking at down there, Colonel?" Kate asked. Danny sealed his helmet and activated his suit's communication system. "Unknown, Admiral. The atmospheric readings show the air is breathable, but barely. Whatever happened to this world, it happened slowly over a very long time." The shuttle Endeavour descended through the thin atmosphere with Danny and his team aboard. Through the small windows, they could see the crystal formations growing larger and more detailed. What had looked like simple structures from orbit were actually vast cities, their spires and towers reaching toward the sky like frozen music, but as they got closer, the damage became clear. Many of the crystal towers were cracked and broken. Others had lost their inner light completely and stood dark against the red sky. The landing party touched down in what had once been a great plaza, now covered with crystal debris and strange growths. "Atmosphere is stable," reported Sergeant Lucas Wright as the team stepped out of the shuttle. "Air is thin but breathable. Temperature is cold but manageable." Danny looked around at the alien city. The crystal buildings were unlike anything humans had ever built, flowing and organic in their design. They seemed to grow from the ground rather than being constructed, and even in their damaged state they were beautiful beyond description. "Spread out," Danny ordered. "Look for entrances, power sources, anything that might lead us to survivors." The team moved carefully through the crystal streets. Their boots crunched on fallen debris, and their breath formed white clouds in the cold air. The silence was complete except for the occasional groan of settling crystal. Sergeant Wright called out from near a large building. "Colonel, over here. I found something." Danny jogged over to where Wright was kneeling beside what looked like a crystal archway. But as Danny got closer, he realized it was not just decoration. It was a doorway that led down into the ground. "Looks like some kind of entrance," Wright said. "The crystals here are still showing faint light patterns." Danny activated his helmets, floodlights, and peered into the darkness below. A tunnel stretched away into the depths of the planet, its walls lined with dimly glowing crystals. The air that rose from the depths was warmer than the surface and carried a faint musical quality that made his ears tingle. "This is Martinez to Indomitable," Danny reported over his radio. "We have found underground access. Requesting permission to investigate." "Permission granted," Kate's voice crackled back. "But stay in constant contact. We do not know what is down there." The team descended into the tunnel, their lights casting dancing shadows on the crystal walls. The passage was wide enough for several people to walk side by side, and the floor was smooth as glass. As they went deeper, the crystals began to glow brighter, as if responding to their presence. "Colonel," whispered Corporal Amy Chung, "look." At this, Danny turned to see what she was pointing at. The walls were covered with patterns that seemed to shift and flow in the light. They were not random formations, but deliberate designs like writing or art frozen in crystal. "It is some kind of record," Danny realized. The Kithara history written in their own language. They continued deeper into the underground complex, following tunnels that branched and twisted through the rock. The crystal formations became more elaborate as they descended, forming chambers and halls that took Danny's breath away. But everywhere they looked, there were signs of decay and neglect. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking, they emerged into a vast underground cavern. Danny stopped dead in his tracks and stared in amazement. The cavern was filled with thousands of crystal pods, each one glowing with soft blue light. Inside each pod he could see the faint outline of a Kithra body. "Dear God," whispered Wright. "They are in some kind of suspended animation." Danny approached one of the nearest pods and looked inside. The Kythera was beautiful in an alien way, its body made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. But even to Danny's untrained eye, it was clear that the being was dying. Cracks ran through its crystalline form and the light was fading. "Martinez to Indomitable," Danny called. "Urgently, we found them. Thousands of them in stasis pods. But they are in bad shape. We need Dr. Turner down here immediately." Dr. Alex Turner arrived with the next shuttle, along with his entire medical team. The young scientist nearly fainted when he saw the cavern full of sleeping Kythera. He had spent months studying their physiology from ancient records, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. "This is incredible," Alex breathed as he set up his equipment. "The stasis technology must be keeping them alive, but just barely. Look at these readings." He pointed to his scanner display, which showed complex patterns of energy flowing through. "The crystal pods, their life support systems are failing. The machinery that keeps them in stasis is breaking down after centuries of operation." Danny watched as Alex and his team worked frantically to understand the alien technology. The doctor's hands shook as he took readings from the pods, his face growing more worried with each measurement. "How long do they have?" Danny asked. Alex looked up with fear in his eyes. "Not long. The cascade failure has already started in some of the pods. When it reaches critical mass, they will all die within days." Danny felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. They had traveled across the galaxy, fought through hostile space, and risked everything to get here. But they might still be too late to save their ancient allies. "There has to be something we can do," he said. Alex nodded grimly. "There is. But it will require technology we do not have and knowledge we are only beginning to understand. We need to stabilize the failing stasis systems while simultaneously treating the crystalline degradation." "What do you need?" Danny asked. "Time," Alex replied, "and a miracle." Danny looked around the cavern at the thousands of dying Kythera. These were the beings who had saved humanity 3 centuries ago. They had given everything they had to keep the human race alive, and now they were dying alone on a forgotten world at the edge of the galaxy. "You will get both," Danny promised. "Whatever it takes." He activated his radio and called up to the fleet. "This is Martinez to all ships. We have found the Kythera, but they are dying. All medical personnel, all engineers, all scientists report to the surface immediately. We are not leaving this world until every last one of them is safe." The response was immediate. Shuttles began launching from every ship in the fleet, carrying doctors and engineers and anyone else who might be able to help. Humanity had not forgotten its debt to the Kythera, and they would not let their saviors die while there was still hope. In the depths of the alien world, surrounded by the sleeping forms of their ancient allies, the humans began their greatest rescue operation. Time was running out, but they would not give up. They could not give up. The Kythera had once stood with humanity against impossible odds. Now it was humanity's turn to return the favor. The underground chamber had become a field hospital unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human doctors worked alongside engineers, their equipment scattered around the ancient Kythera stasis pods. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the crystal walls, and the air hummed with the sound of medical scanners and repair tools. Dr. Alex Turner knelt beside one of the failing pods, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. For 3 days, he and his team had worked without rest, trying to understand the alien technology that kept the Kythera alive. The stasis systems were more complex than anything humans had ever built, but they were breaking down faster than the medical team could repair them. "We lost another one," reported Dr. Noah Campbell from across the chamber. His voice was heavy with exhaustion and grief. The young medical officer had watched helplessly as 3 Kythera died when their pods failed completely. Their crystal bodies had simply crumbled to dust, leaving nothing behind but empty chambers. Alex closed his eyes and took a deep breath. They were running out of time, and he was running out of ideas. The Kythera physiology was so different from human biology that most of their medical knowledge was useless. How do you perform surgery on a being made of living crystal? How do You stop an infection that spreads through molecular bonds? Dr. Turner, called communications specialist Kelly Brooks from near the chamber entrance. I think I found something. Alex looked up to see Kelly standing beside a section of the wall that was covered in flowing crystal patterns. Unlike the rest of the chamber, these formations seemed to pulse with active energy, responding to her presence with waves of soft light. What is it? Alex asked, pushing himself to his feet. I think it is some kind of interface, Kelly explained. Watch. This. She placed her hand against the crystal surface, and immediately the patterns began to change. The light grew brighter, and a low musical tone filled the air. Alex hurried over to where Kelly stood. As the ship's communications expert, she had experience with alien technologies, but this was something entirely new. The crystal formations were reacting to her touch in ways that seemed almost alive. It is responding to neural activity, Alex realized. The crystals are reading your brainwaves and trying to establish communication, Kelly nodded excitedly. That is what I thought. But the interface is designed for Kithra minds, not human ones. I can feel it trying to connect, but it is like trying to speak a language I do not understand. Alex stared at the glowing crystals. If they could establish communication with the Kithra, they might be able to learn how to save them. But the risk was enormous. Direct neural interfaces were dangerous even with human technology, and this was completely alien. I want to try it, Kelly said quietly. Absolutely not, Alex replied immediately. We have no idea what it might do to your mind. You could be brain damaged or worse. Kelly looked around the chamber at the dying Kithra. Doctor, we are losing them. In a few more days they will all be dead. This might be our only chance to save them. Alex followed her gaze. More pods were failing every hour, their occupants slipping away despite everything the human medical team tried to do. The Kithra had sacrificed themselves to save humanity 3 centuries ago, and now humanity was failing to return the favor. There has to be another way, Alex said. What other way? Kelly asked. We have tried everything. Our technology cannot repair their stasis systems fast enough, and we do not understand their biology well enough to treat the crystalline degradation. But if I can communicate with them directly, maybe they can tell us what to do. Alex was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential benefits. Kelly was right that they were running out of options, but he could not bear the thought of losing her in a desperate attempt that might not even work. If we do this, we do it carefully, he finally said. Minimal exposure, constant monitoring, and we pull you out at the first sign of trouble. Kelly smiled for the first time in days. Thank you, Doctor. They spent the next hour preparing for the attempt. Alex connected every medical scanner they had to Kelly's body, monitoring her heart rate, brain activity, and neural patterns. Dr. Campbell stood by with emergency medical supplies, ready to act if something went wrong. Are you ready? Alex asked. Kelly nodded and placed both hands against the crystal interface. Immediately, the formations began to glow brighter than they ever had before. The musical tones grew louder and more complex, filling the chamber with haunting harmonies that seemed to resonate in their bones. I can feel something, Kelly whispered. It is like voices calling from very far away. Alex watched his monitors carefully. Kelly's brain activity was spiking in patterns he had never seen before, but her vital signs remained stable. Whatever was happening, her body was handling it. There is someone here, Kelly said, her voice growing distant. Someone very old and very tired. He says his name is Symphonic Resonance, and he is one of the elders. Alex felt his heart race. They had actually made contact with a living Kithra. After 3 centuries of silence, humanity was speaking with their ancient allies again. Tell him we are here to help, Alex said urgently. Tell him we have not forgotten what his people did for us. Kelly was quiet for several minutes, her face peaceful as the crystal patterns flowed around her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was filled with wonder. He says they remember the war, she reported. He says they remember fighting beside us against the Devourers, but he is amazed that we came looking for them. He thought humans would forget them after a few generations. Never, Alex said firmly. Humanity never forgets its friends. Kelly continued her silent conversation with the Kithra elder. The crystal formations pulsed in rhythm with her words, and Alex could see tears running down her face. "He is showing me what happened," she said. "After the war, the Kithra were dying. Their homeworld was destroyed, their colonies were burning, and their people were scattered across the galaxy. They came here to die with dignity, so they would not be a burden on their human friends." Alex felt his own eyes fill with tears. The Kithra had saved humanity at the cost of their own civilization, then hidden themselves away so humans would not feel obligated to help them. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for loyalty and gratitude. "Tell him we are going to save them," Alex said. "Tell him we have doctors and engineers and the best medical technology in the galaxy." Kelly nodded and continued her mental conversation. But after a few minutes, her expression grew troubled. "He says it may be too late," she reported. "The crystalline cascade failure has spread too far. Even if we can repair the stasis systems, their bodies are breaking down at the molecular level." Alex refused to accept defeat. "Ask him if there is anything we can do. Any treatment, any procedure. Anything at all." Kelly was quiet for a long time. The crystal patterns around her hands grew brighter and more complex, as if an intense discussion was taking place. Finally, she opened her eyes and looked at Alex with amazement. "There is a way," she said, "but it requires something we have never tried before. Human neural patterns can temporarily stabilize Kithra consciousness, but the process is dangerous for both species." "How dangerous?" Alex asked. "The human volunteer would have to maintain direct mental contact during the entire revival process," Kelly explained. "It could take hours or even days, and there is no guarantee that either mind would survive intact." Alex stared at the chamber full of dying Kithra. Thousands of beings who had sacrificed everything to save humanity were slipping away, while he watched. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was to let them all die. "I will do it," he said quietly. "Alex, no," Kelly protested. "You are too important to the mission. If something happens to you, we lose our best chance of saving them." "Then who?" Alex asked. "Who else understands Kithra physiology well enough to guide the revival process?" Kelly looked around the chamber at the other humans working desperately to save their alien friends. Every person there had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not return home. Every person there understood what humanity owed to the Kithra. "We all will," she said finally. "Every human in this chamber. We will take turns maintaining the neural link, sharing the burden so no one person has to bear it alone." Alex felt a surge of pride in his species. This was what made humanity special. Not their technology or their weapons, but their willingness to sacrifice for others. Their refusal to abandon those who had stood beside them. "Tell the elder we accept," Alex said. "Tell him humanity is ready to return the favor." The crystal formations flared with brilliant light, and for a moment the entire chamber was filled with music that sounded like hope itself. The Kithra were going to live, and humanity was going to save them, just as they had been saved 3 centuries before. The first Kithra awakening was like watching a star being born. Dr. Alex Turner kept his hands pressed against the crystal interface, his mind linked with the alien consciousness as life slowly returned to the being in the stasis pod. The process had taken 6 hours, and Alex could feel his strength fading, but he refused to break the connection. "Neural patterns are stabilizing," reported Dr. Noah Campbell, monitoring both Alex and the awakening Kithra. "Both human and alien brain activity are showing positive signs." Around the chamber, dozens of other humans waited their turn. Admiral Kate Phillips had come down from the fleet to witness the first revival, and her face showed the strain of command. They had lost 8 more Kithra while preparing for this moment, their pods failing before the human team could reach them. The crystal being in the pod stirred, its body pulsing with renewed light. Slowly, gracefully, it rose from the stasis chamber and stood before the assembled humans. Alex finally broke the neural link and staggered backward, exhausted but triumphant. The Kithra was beautiful beyond description. Its body was made of living crystal that shifted through shades of blue and silver, and its eyes held the wisdom of centuries. When it spoke, its voice was like music made from wind chimes and flowing water. "I am harmonic echo," the being said. In perfect English, "I remember you, humans. I remember fighting beside your ships when the darkness came to consume us all." Admiral Kate stepped forward, her military bearing softened by wonder. "We remember too. We have come to take you home." Harmonic Echo tilted its crystalline head, a gesture that seemed both alien and familiar. "Home? Our home was destroyed long ago. We came to this world to die in peace, so we would not burden our human friends with our failure." "You did not fail," Kate said firmly. "You saved us. You gave us the time and technology we needed to survive and grow strong. Now we are here to return the favor." The Kithara looked around the chamber at the thousands of pods still waiting to be opened. "So many of us remain. The revival process must be difficult for your people." Alex managed to stand upright, though he swayed slightly from exhaustion. "We can handle it. Every human in this chamber has volunteered to help with the neural linking. We will awaken every single one of your people, no matter how long it takes." Over the following weeks, the underground chamber became a place of miracles. Human volunteers worked in shifts, maintaining the neural links needed to revive the sleeping Kithara. Communications specialist Kelly Brooks coordinated the efforts, her experience with the crystal interface making her invaluable to the process. Chief Engineer Maya Rodriguez worked with awakened Kithara to repair and improve the failing stasis systems. The aliens' knowledge of crystal technology combined with human engineering produced solutions that neither species could have achieved alone. Slowly but surely, they began to save more lives than they lost. The awakened Kithara were amazed by humanity's technological advancement. They had expected to find the same struggling species they had helped centuries ago, but instead they discovered a civilization that had surpassed even their own achievements in many areas. "Your ships are magnificent," observed Symphonic Resonance. The elder who had first spoken with Kelly, he stood beside Admiral Kate on the surface, watching as human shuttles ferried supplies between the fleet and the underground chambers. "Your people have grown strong and wise," Kate smiled. "We had good teachers. Everything we built was founded on the knowledge you shared with us." The elder's crystal form pulsed with what might have been emotion. "We thought we were dying. We thought our sacrifice had been in vain when our civilization fell. But seeing what humanity has become, we know our choice was correct." As more Kithara were revived, they began to share crucial information about the galaxy that humanity had never known. They spoke of hidden refugee populations scattered across distant worlds, survivors of other species that the Devourers had attacked. They revealed the locations of ancient technologies and lost colonies that could benefit all of galactic civilization, but most importantly, they warned of a greater danger approaching. The Devourers were not destroyed in the ancient war, Symphonic Resonance explained during a meeting with Kate and her senior officers. They were merely pushed back to the spaces between galaxies. Our crystal resonance sensors have detected movement in the void. They are returning, and this time they have learned from their defeat. Captain Jake Morrison, who had discovered the original distress signal, leaned forward in his chair. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps 50 years?" the elder replied. "Maybe less. They are traveling slowly, gathering strength, but their destination is clear. They mean to finish what they started centuries ago." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had grown powerful, but they had never faced anything like the Devourers. The ancient recordings showed fleets that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space behind. "What do we need to do?" she asked. Symphonic Resonance's form brightened with determination. "We need to unite the galaxy. Humans, Kithara, and every other species that values life and freedom. Alone, we will fall as we almost did before. Together, we might have a chance." The evacuation of the Kithara world became something greater than a rescue mission. It became the foundation of a new galactic alliance. Human engineering combined with Kithara crystal technology produced ships and weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The awakening aliens began growing new crystal cities aboard human vessels, creating mobile colonies that could travel the stars. Dr. Alex Turner received the highest honors from both species for his work developing the revival techniques. But he remained focused on his research, working with Kythera scientists to understand the approaching threat and prepare defenses. Word of the successful rescue spread throughout known space, changing how other species viewed humanity. The Vorthic Empire, which had initially opposed the mission, sent diplomats to negotiate alliance treaties. Other alien governments began sharing intelligence about hidden dangers and lost technologies. The memorial halls on human ships were transformed from places of mourning into centers of living cooperation. Kythera crystals grew alongside human technology, and the aliens served as honored crew members on vessels throughout the fleet. 6 months after the first awakening, the combined human Kythera fleet departed the dying world. Behind them, they left only empty crystal formations and the memory of what had once been. Ahead lay a galaxy full of new possibilities and old dangers. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of her flagship, now enhanced with living Kythera crystal technology. Beside her, symphonic resonance served as her advisor and friend. Through the view screen, she could see dozens of ships following in perfect formation, each one carrying both human and Kythera crews. The long-range sensors are detecting anomalies. At the galactic edge, reported navigator Ben Carter, something big is moving in the void between star systems. Kate nodded grimly. The Devourers were coming, just as the Kythera had warned, but this time would be different. This time, they would not face a divided galaxy of frightened species fighting alone. Send a message to all ships, Kate ordered. Remind them why we are here. 3 centuries ago, the Kythera stood with humanity when darkness threatened to consume us all. Today we stand together again, stronger than ever before. She looked at symphonic resonance, whose crystal form pulsed with confidence and hope. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when someone threatens our family, Kate continued. All of our family. Human, Kythera, and every species that chooses to stand with us against the darkness. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying its precious cargo toward the core worlds of human space. There, they would begin the work of uniting the galaxy and preparing for the war to come. The Devourers had made one critical mistake in their calculations. They had given humanity and their allies time to remember what they could accomplish together. And humanity never forgot its lessons about the power of unity, sacrifice, and hope. The stars ahead burned bright with promise, and the combined fleet of humans and Kythera sailed toward them with purpose. The greatest rescue mission in galactic history was complete, but the greatest adventure was just beginning.